All right, welcome back to Total Disclosure, where we expose government secrets, false flags, UFOs, and the hidden threats to humanity. Ooh, I just touched something. I'm your host, Ty Roberts, and tonight's guest is Dr. Drew Miller, retired U.S. Air Force colonel, former Pentagon senior executive, Harvard PhD, and the founder of Fortitude Ranch, America's largest survival community. With his intelligence and strategic background, he knows what's coming and why the public isn't being told. So we'll cover practical preparedness, government corruption, close-ups, cover-ups, close-ups. What the hell? I can't read my own writing anymore. Engineer crisis, and the big one, how UFOs, non-human intelligence, and potential disclosure could trigger that very societal collapse. If this sounds like the wake-up call you need, let's go. If you're watching on YouTube, make sure to smash the like button, drop a comment with your top concern, share this episode with your friends, your families, the deep state. I don't really care anymore. And subscribe with that notification on. If you're listening on a podcast platform, rate, review. It's the best and easiest way to help support the show. It takes 20 seconds. Lord knows you're going to be on your phone all night anyway, so help a brother out. With that being said, I want to introduce Dr. Drew Miller. Do people gag on the Dr. Drew part?
No, I go by Drew, so that's
no one's calling you Dr. Drew and trying to confuse people.
Most people use Colonel if they don't use Drew, but
I like that. Colonel Miller. Well, thank you for being here. I want to start off by saying, with any military veteran, I do come from a large military service family. So thank you for everything that you've done. And, thank you for your service to this country, first and foremost.
Sure. It's an honor to serve.
Absolutely. And so I obviously want to start by getting you to tell us a little bit about your background. I mean, as a retired Air Force colonel, intelligence officer, Pentagon veteran, and PhD in operations research, what experience first led you to focus on, societal preparedness, and, should there be a haste to it? I just want to get a little feel for where you are.
Sure. Well, as an intelligence officer, as you mentioned, in the Air Force, I've always been very well aware of the threats. And when I was back in the days of the Soviet Union, and when the Soviet Union fell, they declared a peace dividend, cut military spending, unfortunately wiped out all of our battlefield nuclear weapons. And they thought, we've achieved peace now. We have perpetual peace going forward. And I knew that was just nonsense. Because the threats are growing, and they're growing largely because of technology. Yes, China is a threat, but China is a threat of our own making, because we're interfering in their civil war with Taiwan, and they've made it absolutely clear for over half a century, Taiwan is theirs. They're correct, and they will take it back. And us vowing to defend Taiwan is the thing causing our troubles with China. But it's the new technologies, bioengineering, nanotechnology, all kinds of new technologies that increase the ability of individuals, not a nation state, not even a terrorist group, individuals today can develop weapons of mass destruction, something that could wipe out not just millions, but billions, or potentially most of our species. And that trend is just getting much, much worse now because of artificial intelligence. I'm not talking about super intelligent artificial intelligence. I'm talking about existing artificial intelligence. It's being used as we speak to develop new bioengineered viruses, doing all kinds of great work in medicine, but also you can be 100% confident that North Korea and Russia and China and Iraq and terrorist groups and just nutty individuals who, for example, think there are too many humans on the planet, need to wipe us out to save the planet, they're going to use those tools to do bioengineering to develop human-to-human transmissible H5N1 or some other bioengineered virus that could kill us all. So we're in a bad state in terms of threats, and glad to talk about them on your program.
Well, and I mean, how serious should people be taking this? I mean, I think a lot of people get a bad rap for being a quote unquote prepper, right? Like someone but I don't necessarily think that it's not a bad thing to be prepared for something. I'd rather be prepared and not use it than to not be prepared and have to have it. So to have some basic supplies built up and put away, and routes that you might take given a certain thing happening, because it's not all like just foreign state actors and that kind of stuff. I mean, with the climate and the way it is, natural disasters are happening, all the time. So, with the rising geopolitical tensions, accompanied with, whether you want to call it global warming or just climate change in general, I think the Earth is going through changes, through its whole life, and we're just going into a little tumultuous period. I think we ought to be ready. We owe it to our families to be ready for anything, pretty much.
No, absolutely. I mean, our planet has experienced at least, we think, six, not me, but geologists, people who've studied this. I think we've already been through 6 collapse disasters caused primarily by either asteroid strikes or supervolcano explosions. And it's not just that it's a bad day if you're near where it happens, near ground zero, but all this debris gets thrown up into the atmosphere, the smoke blocks the sun for maybe a year, maybe several years, and then all the plants and then all the animals who need the plants to survive die off. So we've already had mass extinction events. We could still have supervolcano explosions.
Yeah. I was literally just I was just gonna say Yellowstone is one of,
and there's several others around the Earth that could cause a winter that lasts for years and crop failure, massive starvation. And so that's just 2 of them. We track over 50 trigger events that could cause a collapse. So asteroids and supervolcanoes are 2 of the 50. But it's more and more, it's new technology. So it's not just, nation states, a nuclear war with Russia. North Korea, for example, doesn't have a very good nuclear force. It's not very big. It's definitely not accurate. But North Korea has the capability to launch low yield, high EMP effect, electromagnetic pulse weapons that could explode high in the atmosphere over the U.S. They do not need to be accurate. They just need to detonate somewhere high in the atmosphere over the U.S., and that's it for our electric grid. It would be destroyed. And when I say destroyed, I don't mean destroyed for weeks or even months. I mean destroyed for years. And the EMP Commission, chartered by Congress, the EMP Commission studied this threat and concluded that you could lose 90% of the U.S. population, because when the grid goes down, nothing works. I mean, you said you're in Boston. Well, I guarantee you there's no municipal water systems working in any big city when the grid goes down. So you have no water. So that gives you 30 days to find another source of water. Good luck with that. But the biggest thing is people will starve to death. People aren't going to go to work. Food isn't going to be produced, and people will starve to death. And most people aren't just going to stay at home, and quietly, politely starve to death. When you're starving to death, you'll go out to steal and, if necessarily, kill to survive. So the marauder threat is kind of the worst. I should probably define for you. When I say a collapse, I mean 2 things. Number 1, the economy is not functioning, largely because people aren't going to work. And number 2, there's widespread, long-lasting loss of law and order. That's a collapse. And preppers have known about this for decades, but more and more people are becoming preppers. The estimate now is 1/3. And I guarantee you that preppers, but the first rule of prepping is don't tell anyone you're a prepper. You don't want them to know that, hey, if you go to Ty's house, his basement's full of food. Great place to break into.
Rob.
In a collapse. So you keep that confidential. So people know preppers. It's just you don't know they're preppers if they're good ones. Right. And the reason preppers have a bad image is a completely asinine TV show called Doomsday Preppers, a decade plus ago. No rational, normal prepper is going to invite you into their house and show you, here's my secret storage room. So the only people who came on that show were not normal preppers. They were idiots, and then the show made them look that way. Our Fortitude Ranch, we have 1,000 members, and they are doctors. They are former military, a lot of former law enforcement. We have a lot of former and current intelligence officers, people in Homeland Security. That's our membership. Smart professionals who recognize that the threat is out there, and also that society can break down really quickly. And by the way, you don't even need to have a disaster to trigger a collapse. Nowadays, with social media, I mean, if a lot of people just start breaking the law and looting, it can spread. That happened in the United Kingdom in 2011. They had 4 days of violence. And in Portland, Oregon, I mean, we saw that a year or so ago, where just night after night, protests going on. And the people may have had legitimate reasons to protest. But the point is, whenever you have a big protest going on, the police are overwhelmed. Bad people know that, and they start looting. And stuff like that can spread and multiply. And if it goes in other cities, you could have a collapse where there is no trigger event. It just starts and then spreads.
Yeah.
So our society is just, we're to some degree, we are in a civil war. I mean, you already have widespread breaking of laws. Most counties in the United States have sheriffs, in some cases county boards too, but sheriffs who refuse to enforce gun laws because they believe they're unconstitutional. You have that's on the conservative kind of rural side.
Right.
On the other side, you got liberal Democrats in big cities who are refusing federal immigration laws, helping their citizens evade capture, subverting federal law enforcement. That's another form of civil disorder. And a lot of experts say that, we're kind of in the early stages of a civil war. Ray Dalio, he's the founder of Bridgewater Capital, probably one of the most smartest persons alive today. He's made a future by predicting future events. And he's estimated that the likelihood of a U.S. Civil War is over 50%.
Oh my God.
So there's a good chance we're going to have that. And it could be triggered by almost anything. There's a big protest against Trump. His supporters fight back. It escalates out of control. I mean, history is full of that. I mean, do you remember what started World War I? I'll put you on the spot.
What started World War I?
What started World War I? What was the spark for that?
Wasn't it, Jesus. What? I'm obviously now blanking, but.
Well, it's a trivial thing, so I'd be surprised if you'd remember. There was an assassination of an archduke, a minor archduke in Serbia, and then the Austrians and the Germans and the French and the British reacted to it. Things got out of hand. It was very irrational, but it developed into World War I.
Which
things
then
can
led
happen
to
for
World War
irrational
II.
reasons. Yeah, to a large degree, yes. That set up Hitler and, the Nazi rise to power, set up World War II. So things happen for very irrational reasons. So we think, and we just think, we have a model. It's called the probability of collapse model. I developed it about 10 years ago. I presented it in Military Operations Research Society Symposium. And then we updated it about 2 years ago. We asked a lot of experts questions about what's the likelihood of things like a H5N1 pandemic happening? What's the likelihood of an alien invasion? That's another thing we track. And then we ask them, well, if this happens, if this trigger occurs, what's the likelihood that it'll escalate into a collapse? I mean, if you have a minor hurricane or even a major hurricane, that's a local thing. That's not likely to develop into a collapse.
That'll stay kind of localized to that region.
But this model adds it all up, gets inputs from experts, and our latest estimate is that the annual probability of a collapse disaster it's highly uncertain. It's anywhere, we estimate it, from 16 to 57% every year. It's not low. I mean, it is absolutely not low. The probability of an asteroid strike, yeah, that's low. But with 50 plus trigger events that could cause a collapse, you could have a bad economic recession, depression, that leads to people revolting. There's a lot of ways you could get to a collapse. And our estimate is it's anywhere from 16 to 57%. It's not 1%. It's not 2%. It's double digit up to high double digit. And artificial intelligence makes almost everything worse because, I know how to make H5N1 mammal to mammal transmissible because your taxpayer dollars were used to do that. H5N1 used to be called bird flu. Don't call it bird flu anymore because it's not just in birds. It's in over 50 mammal populations around the world, and it'll eventually be human contagious. And partly because your taxpayer dollars did what's called gain of function research. Yeah, and they made H5N1 mammal to mammal transmissible. And not only did they do the research successfully, they published how they did it.
Yeah.
And it was not CRISPR technology. It was a low-tech means. Those idiots published it.
What do you think?
So they could help Korea or terrorists or anyone do it.
What do you think?
I think it's completely irresponsible. Our government is leading us into a collapse. I've got a book coming out called Preparing to Survive in the Age of Collapse. And one of the chapters details 30 examples of how our government is killing us now and setting us up for a real disaster and a collapse.
Is it of your, okay, kind of to scoop back just a tad. We just went, obviously in 2020, God, I don't even want to say the names because I don't want to get the video taken down. But the thing in 2020, the COVID, did you see that as an accident that maybe was like, hey, it leaked, let it happen, and we can kind of like do a case study and use this for our eventual, because a lot of people think that like you said, the government is gearing us up for something, whatever that might be, draw the question mark. But it seemed like the pandemic was some sort of dry run in how you can control society given the right parameters.
I mentioned we have 30 examples of how government is killing us. That's one of the 30 examples, because the United States government, this is completely facts, so no one can censor you for this. The United States government gave money to the Wuhan Institute in Wuhan, China, to do biological gain of function research. We did it. And then there was taxpayer dollars. Our taxpayer dollars were used for that. China is, we're not at war with them, but they're kind of on our potential enemy list. To be funding biological research,
right?
It's insane. If someone said, Senator Ron Paul gets credit for getting this out because it was denied by the CDC, by Fauci. They denied this for a long time. But eventually the facts came out. They did do that. Senator Paul kept pressing them over and over, and Congress would call them in. And it's an absolute fact. We gave money, the United States government gave money to the Wuhan Institute to gain of function research. It's just incredible. Why our government would do that, why would they be so irresponsible, is because they don't give a crap about protecting our lives. It's all about re-election votes. And they had people who wanted to do the research. Some of it was banned over here. They said, oh, we'll get other countries to do it. And that's what they do. They replied. Another example I'll give you, which is more fits with your UAP focus, is, why in the hell is our government sending probes out into space with maps on the side of them showing, hey, we're the third planet from the sun. Here's where our solar system, to help foreign civilizations find out exactly where we are. Can you imagine it? Why would you do such a damn dumb thing? Would you do it because it's good for my benefit or for my survival? Hell no. There's as you know, there's estimated 100 to 300 sextillion planets in the universe. That's the best estimate of astronomers. Sextillion, no one knows what that means. That's millions of millions. That's a 1 or a 3 followed by not 6 zeros like a million. It's 21 zeros.
Oh, 21
zeros in sextillion. So there's very, very, very likely to be other life out there. And, Homo sapiens, we're only like 300,000 years old. The universe is estimated to be 14 billion years old, which means we're relative newcomers. So there's a good chance that on these, 200, whatever, 6 trillion other planets where maybe there's thousands, maybe there's a million, maybe there's more of them that have intelligent life. Odds are their intelligent life is smarter than us, which means if we map out and send signals into space advertising where we are, they can come here and we're like ants or bacteria to them with their intelligence level. And, they could say, oh, great source of fertilizer here. Let's mine this planet. Well, or decide we're just bad creatures, immoral, and wipe us out. But for our government to do it, it's insane. And the reason they do it is because NASA lobbies for money, astronomers at universities, they want money, and it's everything Congress and our government does is about re-election votes. So if there's a lobby group for it, they will fund it for votes and support, even if it means it's putting my life at risk. And so that's two examples out of 30 that I describe in the book, Preparing to Survive in the Age of Collapse. And the one other thing in there that's important is that the biggest barrier to prepping, the thing that holds Fortitude Ranch back the most, is all the GD government regulations, the building codes, the zoning codes. I mean, I'll have 160 acre property in the middle of nowhere, no neighbors, but the government, when I say government, I'm really talking about state Democratic Party controlled governments. They don't do it in Republican rural areas, but they definitely do it in Democratic Party controlled states. They'll say, oh, you can only have one building and one outbuilding on your property because we want to control what you build and how you build and everything.
One outbuilding? What does that mean?
That means you can have like a barn, one barn and one house. That's it.
Why are they limiting what we can build on a property that you own? If you own the property,
why are they telling you how your stair balusters or the kind of electrical outlets? It's because it's more jobs for government employees. Government employees vote Democrat. So the goal of the Democratic Party is to get as many regulations out there as possible. I call it the perverted triangle in my book. The perverted triangle is, well, let me explain the iron triangle. The iron triangle is the political science term for businesses and their lobbyists, the bureaucrats that regulate them, and then the congressmen on those committees. And that's a bad thing in political science, the iron triangle. Well, we have the perverted triangle. It's still bureaucrats, government bureaucrats, and career politicians. They're the worst of the three. But the third one is lawyers. That's the other thing that's destroyed our government and our society and is eventually going to lead to us being wiped out. We want more. The Democrats want more regulations because it's more jobs and more money for lawyers. The trial attorney lawyers, again, that's another huge supporter of the Democratic Party. And so they're always trying to pass more laws, more regulations. It's more jobs for the government bureaucrats. It's more lawsuits and income for the lawyers. And those people vote and support the Democratic Party elected officials. And the Republicans really aren't much better. They do the same thing. They violate our Constitution, will sell almost anything for a vote.
Look at the fact that, okay, and I was looking into this before the show because I knew you were coming on and I wanted to have some stuff that I just found out that we are one of the only countries, if not the only country, that allows our enemies and again, I put China as a quote unquote enemy because like you said, we're not in like a hot war with them or anything, but the Chinese are buying up land right next to our most sensitive facilities. How are we allowing that to happen?
Money and votes for career politicians explains everything. I tell people the book outlines a lot of preparedness improvements we could make, like stockpiling food. We need a civil ground patrol, like civil air patrol, to get more volunteers available for collapse recovery. But the most important preparedness improvement we can make in the United States is term limits. We need term limits to stop career politicians. Because just like that EMP commission that Congress funded, decades ago, they did a great study, the leading experts, and they all said our grid is very, very weak. There's a documentary called Grid Down, Power Up. Everyone should watch it. It explains all this to you. Ooh. So the EMP commission came back to this report and said, you've got to harden the U.S. electric grid. Cyber attacks can take it out. EMP can take it out. Physical attacks, people attacking and shooting up transformers, can take it down. Yeah, it's got all kinds of problems. Yeah. You need to harden it or 90% of Americans could die. So what happened after the report was issued? What did Congress do? You want to guess?
I mean, my first instinct is nothing, but they
did nothing. That's exactly right. They did not a goddamn thing. Because there's no lobby group behind hardening the electric grid. The utility companies don't want to do it because it costs some money. Yeah. Relative to the expense, it's a trivial, but it costs billions of dollars to harden the grid. And now they're afraid, I'll lose votes because my opponents will now say, hey, Congressman X, you voted to harden the electric grid. That raised your electric rate. You're now paying $100 more a year on your electric bill because of hardening the electric grid. They're afraid of losing votes. Everything they do
it's not a voter issue.
Prioritizes votes, not saving people's lives.
So are you saying that Congress and elected representatives won't give a shit about hardening the thing until it becomes a direct, kind of like with in the late 70s, or late 70s, even probably all through the 70s actually. Carter, Reagan, Bush, they all started running on the environment when no one, like, they didn't give a fuck about it before, but all of a sudden, the oil tycoon George Bush is the environmental candidate in the 80s, and it's like, what are we doing here? It's over promising during the campaign and then underperforming while you're in the actual government. It fucking blows my mind that people eat it up every election cycle. They eat this shit up from the politicians. And now, mind you, I have several Congress members' phone numbers. I'm friends with, mostly Republican, just by happenstance to their UAP issue topic. But all of the members I know, they support term limits. They support banning inside trading by Congress members. I mean, how do you get government to act?
Well, my book mainly is addressing preparedness, but I do talk about political reform. The last 3 chapters, 2 of them are on civil disobedience. One is on the civil disobedience we need to do to stop obeying all the unconstitutional laws. The 9th and the 10th Amendment to the Constitution are still there if you look at what's in the Constitution today, but it's no longer enforced. The Supreme Court no longer enforces the 9th Amendment, which says you have natural rights, even if they're not listed in the Constitution. You have natural rights basically to be left alone. Government, according to the 10th Amendment, the federal government can only do those things specifically written out in the Constitution. So they can run a post office, they can make foreign policy, they can raise a military, they can defend the United States. Those are legal things. Healthcare is completely illegal, but the Supreme Court no longer pays any attention to the 10th Amendment. And the 9th Amendment, which is even more important, protecting our natural rights, to use our money as we want. There's nothing in the Constitution that authorizes the federal government to take money from you and give it to me or anyone else. That is completely unconstitutional. Right. But since 1937, since FDR basically broke the Supreme Court, got them to back down under threats, the U.S. Constitution is effectively not enforced anymore, not the most important parts of it. So there's no limits to government. So now you can buy votes with anything you want. That's why we're sending probes into space. We're raising a war on drug. There is nothing in the federal Constitution giving the federal government the right to tell you things you can and cannot take. That's your natural right to do what you want to do, to eat what you want to do. Government can't regulate that, not legally, but of course they do. Because there's votes in that, and there's lobbying power, and a lot of money and donations. That's why we have this. But I outline in the book how we got to this political mess, and then how what we need to do is, let me just show you the book here. We just need to stop obeying the laws. This is a book by Charles Murray called We the People. And this book basically says, if Americans just stop following all these unconstitutional laws, most of us, or even 10, 20% of us just say, what? It's my house. I'm not going to do my stair balusters or stair height the way you want it. Go F yourself. Right. Stay out of my house. If people stopped obeying all these laws, you'd overwhelm the court system, the government. They wouldn't be able to enforce them. So that's what Charles Murray published this book several years ago. And this is what we need to do. We need to disobey. And then the other chapter on civil disobedience in the book is about artificial intelligence. The government is not saving us from artificial intelligence. There's not just billions of dollars going into investments in AI. There's huge amounts of money being donated to congressmen and to elected officials. And so we're pursuing artificial intelligence, even though it's the worst threat we've ever faced. The leading AI experts, Geoffrey Hinton, one of the Nobel Prize winning founders of AI, they're all saying you cannot pursue super intelligent artificial intelligence. It could wipe us out. It'll be smarter than us. There's no way you can control it because it's smarter than us. And it'll probably decide at some point, I could have a lot more fun. I could get a lot more done if I didn't have these pesky, stupid humans to deal with. and easily, it's got robots they control. They're already in biological research labs. It'll be very, very easy for AI to wipe out humans if they want to do it.
Well,
and the leading safety experts are saying they're going to do it. You've got to stop this. There's another book I'll show you. These are the two leading AI experts right here, Yudowsky and Soros. And the title
I love that play on
anyone
words.
builds it, everyone dies. If anyone builds it, China, the US, doesn't matter who builds super intelligent AI. If anyone builds it, we're all going to be suffering from it.
And that's a play on a famous movie title about, angels and baseball. And if you build it, they will come. I like how he twisted that to that.
Yeah.
But you're absolutely right about an AI. We are sprinting when we should be slow crawling. And then, you look at guys like Peter Thiel, who have contracts with the government for, his companies like Palantir, defense contracts. And he's also working on AI. He's got his elbows deep in all of it in Silicon Valley. But then he spends his off time talking about or doing seminars about about the Antichrist. And it's like, oh, I'm not the Antichrist. And it's like, yeah, that's exactly what the Antichrist would say when you want us to get, like, he's super transhumanist. And, so a journalist asked him a question and was like, does the human race, do we deserve to survive? And he hesitated. And the journalist was like, well, that was a really long pause. That was uncomfortable. And, dude, the guy just freaks me out. The people that are dealing with AI, they're all screaming that it could end, and it most likely ends with our replacement, or at least some degree of overlord kind of deal. And yet we're just sprinting fully at it because, like you said, lobbyists are lobbying. They're donating tons of money to Congress. All the tech companies are the ones funding this new White House ballroom. Why do you think that is? They need the data centers.
Well, Peter Thiel has a survival facility in New Zealand. A lot of high-tech executives have places in New Zealand. Mark Zuckerberg, another AI leader, he's got a big facility, huge one in Hawaii. There's been several articles published on this. A lot of the tech leaders, they're into prepping and survival because they know what's coming, what artificial intelligence is going to do. And the rich people have it. There's a place called Survival Condo, a beautiful, beautiful facility. It's just that it costs $1.5 to $3 million. So unfortunately, we try to make Fortitude Ranch affordable. It's more like a middle class price. But the rich tech execs have fantastic survival facilities. And the only thing I hate, I don't mind them spending their money on survival facilities. The thing that I really hate is that in a collapse, the big survivors, Fortitude Ranch, we're small. We've got 8 locations, but, our membership is in thousands, not in the millions that it would take to make a difference. So unfortunately, in a collapse, the survivors are going to be ultra high net worth rich people, the best marauder groups, and even worse, the horrible politicians, because they're going to be protected at your expense at Mount Weather and Raven Rock, Site R in Pennsylvania.
The continuation
lots
of
of facilities. So they survive. And in any kind of a collapse, whatever causes it, the number one priority of government is not protecting you. The number one priority of government in a collapse is protecting itself. They call it continuity of government. That's exactly right. And not only did they give, they'd stockpile nothing for us. They do nothing for our survival, but they have fantastic facilities. Mount Weather doesn't just have survival facilities. They have media rooms. So the congressmen there can stay in touch with their districts to keep campaigning during the collapse. They've got wonderful facilities. They don't do crap for us.
Have you ever?
And that's who I really regret. Who's going to survive in a collapse is all these politicians. And by the way, their executive orders, this is outlined in the book. I don't know if I've got it here. Raven Rock. Yeah, it's right here. This is another really good book. Raven Rock outlines the executive orders, for example, where government agents and agencies are authorized to come knock on your door during a collapse and steal your food. Steal any resource they want. Because again, the government's priority is protecting itself, If they need more food, they'll steal it from citizens authorized by law. That's how perverted our government. That's how horrible our government has become. Do you have a natural right to your own property? Of course you do. It's there in the
Until such
Constitution. It's the
time.
Ninth Amendment. The Ninth Amendment is part of the Bill of Rights. The First to the 10th Amendments are the Bill of Rights: freedom of religion, press, the right to bear arms, et cetera, et cetera. But the Ninth Amendment says, hey, there's a lot more natural rights than this. Even if they're not listed here, you still have natural rights. And number one is your right to privacy and your right to property. Your property is yours. They can tax you for things that are authorized, like national defense, but they can't take your money for anything they want to do. The Constitution was laid out to prevent that. But again, since a 1937 Supreme Court case and cases since then, the Supreme Court no longer enforces any limits to government power.
Yeah, and it seems whatever limits there may have been after 9/11, I mean, gone. Just complete and utter. And when did you stop? When did you officially retire from government in general?
I left government. I tried from the Air Force in 2010. I was still working at the Institute for Defense Analyses. It's a Department of Defense think tank. I was doing that as a civilian, as an analyst, not as a government employee. I was in the senior executive service in the Pentagon briefly, but most of my work has been, I was a part-time reserve officer for most of my career, active duty intel officer, then intel officer in plans and programs in the Guard and the Reserve.
So for all of what you're listing, whether it's, I'll take AI out of it for now, because obviously when you were in, it wasn't a thing yet, or it was probably somewhere in DARPA, but it hadn't kind of hit the public yet. Government, do they have plans for each of these kind of events? Something, large scale devastation, whether it be natural or nuclear, or insert, problem here. Do they have plans for each of these, or is it just kind of one blanket plan to kind of fall back on and adjust to what is happening?
They have no realistic plans. They have some plans and scenarios, but they're a joke. And again, I condemn them in my book because I've worked with them. A lot of them are classified, but a lot of it is unclassified. Books cover that, and I've experienced it. Basically, what the government wants you to believe is, trust us, we'll take care of you, nothing to worry about.
Yeah.
Vote to reelect us. That's the message government wants. So they do not have any honest warnings. They don't have honest exercises. So a pandemic scenario, for example, it's like a COVID. It's like a non-event pandemic, a low lethality, not a big deal pandemic. H5N1, different variants of it, but many of the variants that people get them, they've historically been 50 to 60% lethal, not less than 1% like COVID-19. Huge lethality. No one's going to go to work during an H5N1 pandemic. Does the government have any planning and preparedness for that? Hell no, not at all. Because if they were honest about it, that would alarm the people and they could lose votes. And again, the number one priority of our government is re-election. So they lie to you. So if you look up what's the H5N1 threat, if you ask biologists and experts, they'll tell you it's inevitable. Former director of the Center for Disease Control, Dr. Redfield, yes, he said it's inevitable. And he says he thinks Dr. Redfield, again, a former, not just a doctor, former director of the Center for Disease Control, he has said recently that an H5N1 pandemic is probably going to be bioengineered, because probably the people are going to modify it because it's such a powerful, lethal virus. And it's a flu virus, so it's fairly easy to transmit. He's warned that it's inevitable. So go to the Center for Disease Control website, look up H5N1. Are you going to read any of what I just said? Hell no. What you'll read is H5N1 low risk. That's what they put. They want you to be calm, trust in government, pay your taxes, re-elect people, and everything will be okay. And it's a huge lie. Our government lies to us all the time.
Well, that's, I mean, anyone that's watching or listening to this show will definitely agree with you there. Are you ever worried about, have you considered any type of like false flag operation? So the government committing one of these kind of large scale disasters on itself?
Well, I mean, why are we going to war with Venezuela?
Well, that's what I was getting to. Is
Yeah, I
what
mean,
are we doing right
it
now?
doesn't make sense. Fentanyl is not a weapon of mass destruction. I'm sorry. I mean, I'm not a fan. I don't want to get into individual politics, but we have real weapons of mass destruction and threats to worry about. Fentanyl isn't one of them. But yeah, if you have a war, it helps distract you and helps you win support. That's a practice that's gone on before.
Well, and not to diminish what you said, but I think that fentanyl it's not a weapon of mass destruction, but it's a weapon of a long-term systemic destruction. It is an issue, but it can be resolved in other ways, like locking the borders up. And I believe in Canada, the port that comes through that area, only 3% of the vessels are actually inspected and checked out of the hundreds of thousands of bins that come through every day. And so I think there's other ways you could fight that. So I'll agree that it's not like a mass, like it's not a bomb. It's not instant like some of the other things, but I think it is a long-term issue.
Yeah, but it's a personal decision you can make. You can decide to take drugs or not take drugs.
Right.
The problem with the war on drugs, and by the way, the war on drugs is another one of the 30 examples of government killing us. When you do what we've done with the war on drugs, Nixon did it. It started with President Nixon, a huge vote
his
buyer
wife,
for him, very popular.
Wasn't it his wife specifically?
I don't know that, but it was the Nixon administration he campaigned on, and it's been popular. But the point about the war on drugs is, if people are going to take drugs and they're very expensive because you're banning their legal sale and you go onto the black market, you basically are giving money and business to gangs, to drug lords and all those people by doing that. Also, you're raising the price. You are not helping my safety as a non-drug user by fighting the war on drugs. You're making it worse. Why? Because if you're interdicting drug supplies, you're outlawing it, you're making it expensive, and people are still getting these drugs, paying a huge price, what are they going to do? They're going to go out and rob people like me and potentially kill me in the process to get money for their drugs. The Constitution does not authorize governments to be dictating what we take. If you want to do stupid things, stick your tongue in an outlet, smoke cigarettes at high rates, get drunk, take drugs. That's your decision, as long as it doesn't impact me. If you're driving a car, it impacts me. But if you're at home doing stupid stuff and harming yourself, I think you have the right to do it. And when government tries to stop it and buy votes by popular things, I'm going to make the world safe for
overstepping,
drug takers. You make things worse off, and you also run up huge bills. And now you're taking my money. Taking my money to pay for all these things.
Okay,
but the war on drugs has been a disaster. It has not stopped drug use. It just makes it more expensive and raises crime rates and death rates for innocent, good people. That's what the war on drugs does.
You know what? I will actually concede to something like that, because again, I am on the same wavelength that if it is your prerogative, if you want to sit in your house and shoot up heroin or fentanyl, again, where it becomes a safety issue for others, like you said, getting behind the wheel. But a license is not a right; it's a privilege. So, that again, it's easy to draw those lines there. So I do agree with you. I do agree with you. When moving on to some, going back to what we were talking about, like you said, the Doomsday Prepper show kind of tainted the water. But now all these billionaires are building bunkers and setting up these communities, and if they're not taking it, if they're not laughing and they're actually building these $1 million facilities, it starts to make the regular person really wonder, is there a concerted effort to, just in case there is a disaster, we don't want too many people knowing how to survive that disaster?
Well, I don't think government has a specific policy to discourage prepping. They do make it harder. I mean, like we stockpile fish antibiotics at Fortitude Ranch because the regulations, the difficulty of buying human antibiotics is too hard. But about a third of Americans are estimated to be prepping now. And there was a really neat headline that was in both Bloomberg News and the Washington Post a couple of years ago. And the title of the article was "The Preppers Were Right." Of course, we knew we were right, but prepping is an absolutely smart thing to do. It's like life insurance. Why do you buy life insurance? Well, because, if I die, my family's going to have expenses, won't have their income earner. We have life insurance at Fortitude Ranch, not life insurance that pays if you die, but insurance to help prevent you from dying, to keep you alive. And it's a smart thing to do. And the other thing that makes it more reasonable for people to join Fortitude Ranch, our survival community, is we're not just a survival community. We're also a recreational center. So in good times, you can come to a Fortitude Ranch location and vacation, hike in the woods, go to the local attractions, stay there for free. It's a vacation place. But and I got bleeped for saying this on Fox News, but when the shit hits the fan, that's the official prepper term, SHTF, then Fortitude Ranch is no longer a vacation facility. It's a survival community.
Down.
Yeah, locks down, staff is in charge, and everyone has guard duty and chores to perform, planting and growing food. We turn into a survival community at that point. But in the meantime, we're a vacation facility, and you can vacation at any of our locations, not just your home fort.
Well, you know what? That's actually kind of interesting. Because, I think what a lot of people talk about, or at least think about it, is like, oh, you're going to build a bunker to never use it. And it's like, no, that's not you're missing the point. Again, it can be dual purpose, but when it comes time, it then serves its ultimate purpose. And its ultimate purpose is to keep you alive. It's to keep humankind alive, or humanity alive, for another day, another week, another month, another year. And so what would you say the number one, what's your number one worry?
It's bioengineering. It's so easy to do nowadays and so powerful. I'm surprised we have not already had a bioengineered pandemic. I've been expecting it for quite a while. And it could be that COVID-19, as you mentioned earlier, the intelligence community is split. It's about 50-50. Some people think, yes, this virus came from Wuhan. Whether or not it was an accident or deliberate, they can't prove that. But about 50% of the intelligence community concluded that. But it is so easy to do. It's been published. The gain of function research, how they did it is published. The CRISPR technology to bioengineer genetics and make a new virus is out there. And I'm absolutely positive, not just Russia and China and North Korea and Iraq, but probably terrorist groups and potentially environmentalists. Some nutty environmentalists as well are doing it. And their reasoning could be, they can make a strong moral argument. The U.S. is not U.S. Humans are, we are causing great harm to our planet. The estimates are that every day, lots of species on Earth, plant and wild species, are just wiped out. They're gone extinct because there's so many humans. We've taken so much ecosystems, natural areas out that they've lost their habitat. We are changing the climate that's causing some other stuff. So you can have a biologist, and then eventually we're going to kill ourselves off as well and potentially destroy the planet with AI. So you could have a biologist who knows how to use CRISPR, that's the gene editing technology,
I know,
and makes a moral conclusion to say, look, I'm going to introduce a virus that's 95% lethal, and it's going to kill off almost all humans. So I'm going to kill off 7 billion humans. But by doing that, I'm saving wildlife. I'm saving the planet. AI isn't going to develop during this collapse disaster with all these people being killed off. And as a result of me doing this, I'm now making it possible for hundreds of billions, trillions of future humans to live in a better world that hopefully will result after I kill off, the disaster we've got right now. They could make a moral argument, a strong one, and then develop that virus and release it. And when that happens, it's game over for most.
That is
We'll survive at Fortitude Ranch because we're designed to survive pandemics, any kind of a collapse. We keep our people separated. We're not all in one underground silo sharing an air supply. We're in separate buildings. We're spread out to defend against marauders. So we can survive a pandemic.
Did you?
But most would not.
I got to ask, when COVID started, did you at least take that? I mean, because if I was a community, that was kind of a good chance to do at least a dry run.
Well, when COVID-19 came out, we were watching it. Again, we monitored these threats, but very early on, Harvard Medical School released a study on COVID-19. There was very little data. China was holding it back deliberately, but there was enough data out there that Harvard Medical School wrote a really good study early on that I saw and studied. And their conclusion was, yes, there's a pandemic coming, but the lethality rate of COVID-19, we believe, is much, much less than 1%. And they had good analysis in their report. So I immediately put out a report. We've got an app called the Collapse Survivor app, and we do threat alerts on it. You can download it on an Android or an Apple. It's called Collapse Survivor. So we put out alerts saying, we've been warning you about a pandemic. This is not it. This is not a bad one. Because with the lethality rate of much less than 1%, that is not going to stop people from going to work. That's not very deadly. For older people it was, for people with respiratory issues it was, but for most people, that was not a big threat. So we immediately issued a report saying, our conclusion is this is not the one we've been warning about. This is not going to be bad. And people would have gone to work. It was just governments later on, especially in democratic states, did start forcing people to stay away from work. But there was no need to for COVID-19, just people who had vulnerability, elderly people with respiratory issues or just bad health. They needed to self-isolate, but there was no reason not to go to work during COVID-19.
Right. Okay. So how long do you think it would take you? So granted, I mean, pick your poison on what starts it. How long would it take your ranch to be ready, battle ready, if you will? How from
we're always
start
ready. So we have full-time staff there. I mean, we're always manned and ready for a collapse. That's the whole purpose of Fortitude Ranch is full-time staff. But our members don't come. Well, they can come to vacation, but they don't come for a collapse unless they get a warning on the Collapse Survivor app or they hear the news to know there's something bad coming.
I was going to say,
then our members come.
Of course, the app, if something really bad happened, the electrical grid goes down, cell phones are only going to work for a period of time. So there has to be some sort of alternative for them to. So
we tell our members, look, if you can't contact us, the app's not working. That's a good clue. There's probably a collapse coming. Come to Fortitude Ranch.
Okay.
Now, vacation. There's no penalty. If you come there and it turns out you were wrong, there isn't a collapse. There's no penalty. You just take a vacation day and have some fun while you're there. So there's no penalty to come to Fortitude Ranch when there's not a collapse.
I might have to come visit you guys and see.
Well, you got good locations near you. If you're in Boston, I went to Harvard in Boston and Cambridge. Just north of you in Maine, in a rural part of southern Maine, is Fortitude Ranch, Maine. And you could go north of New York City and get to the Catskills. Fortitude Ranch, New York is in the Catskills. We don't give out our specific locations. Yeah,
that's interesting.
But they're just two very good ones not far from you.
Well, that's I don't want to give too much away about what I would do if something happened, but that's good to know. I definitely would like to talk to you about something after, not on air. Something I deal with a lot is non-human intelligence, the idea of contact with another civilization. People have argued, Dr. Hal Puthoff, Dr. Eric Davis, many smart people have talked about how disclosure of a non-human intelligence could lead to a societal level upheaval, collapse, call it what you want. How are you looking at something like that? That, I mean, more hearings in Congress about UFOs and crash retrievals being an absolute reality. Has it gone, alien invasion? I bet that was low at the list for a long time, but it seems it should be getting a little bit higher up. Not maybe not an alien invasion, but even open contact could cause problems. You know, biologic issues we didn't understand. Every time a superior species or another species comes into contact with another, disease ravishes the less advanced, and that would be us in that case. So, is that something that you're looking at?
Yeah, I mean, there absolutely could be a panic like that happens because if you think that, hey, there are aliens here and they're going to take over, a lot of people are going to say, well, if this could be the end of the world, why am I going to go to work? Well, I'm not. And anytime people don't go to work, things don't get produced, food doesn't get distributed, that can lead to a collapse. So that's one of the reasons you hear all the time as to why they haven't disclosed, if they are hiding this, is because they don't want people to panic. They don't want people to give up and stop working, stop investing, because they're concerned that, hey, there is an alien civilization that's smarter than us. They could wipe us out. I just did some interviews with the Collapse Survivor App's a separate company, and just did some interviews with them. And we were talking originally was the AI threat about artificial intelligence, how to survive if there's a super intelligent artificial intelligence takeover. And in the course of doing several interviews, we figured out that, you know what, the strategy to survive we'll use at Fortitude Ranch is the same for either super intelligent artificial intelligence takeover or an alien takeover, because it's both the same situation. Someone smarter, more capable than you that could wipe you out if they wanted to is in charge. How do you survive that? And what we came up with is what we call the rural rat strategy. It doesn't sound good, but basically our strategy at Fortitude Ranch is if super intelligent artificial takes over, and by the way, the experts are saying that could happen in 2 to 10 years. It's near term. Or if there's an alien invasion and some alien civilization takes over, what we're going to do at Fortitude Ranch is, of course, all our members will come. And what we're going to do is we're not going to pose any threat to the ruling AI system. We're not going to fight them. I hope our military will stop them, but if they can't, and they probably can't, we're not going to fight them. We're also not going to be consuming we're not going to stay away from them. And that's easy to do because, we're not near data centers. We're not near electric lines. We're in really remote areas at Fortitude Ranch, like rural rats are. So we're going to stay in areas they don't care about. We're not going to consume any resources that they want. All we do is we farm and we ranch. We grow our chickens and sheep, cattle at some locations, but we're not going to bother them. And so by not posing a threat to them, and then we're going to defend ourselves. If they do come at us, if they send drones, we got 10-gauge shotguns that are really good at shooting down drones. We'll fight robots. We will fight to impose a cost, but just to defend ourselves. So we want to be like, we regard rural rats. We don't like them. They're horrible creatures. But they're out there not bothering us. It's not worth the cost of trying to exterminate them. So that's our rural rat strategy. And then we're adding, actually, the Collapse Survivor app is just now starting to pursue a project I think you'd find interesting in your audience. They're starting what they call the Survivor Arc. They're going to encourage people like Fortitude Ranch, people who have a lot of ARC. What we're going to start doing is we're going to start protecting not just our normal chickens and corn and potatoes and artichokes, sunchokes, but we're also going to start trying to take care of some plants and possibly some species that are not likely to survive a collapse. Because zoos, for example, are not going to survive a collapse. No. Data centers with information nothing's going to survive a collapse unless you're designed to, unless you're a remote survival community or a Raven Rock type.
Well, that isn't that why they have
trying to do that.
Don't they have a seed bank?
They do. It's called the Svalbard Seed Bank. I talk about it in my book. It's up in Norway. There's a problem with that bank, though. It is also not designed to survive a collapse. It's in a vault, but if people are starving to death, and I'm in charge of Russia's Navy, and people are starving in Russia, I'm going to say, hey, I want you to surface, go to Svalbard, surface. It's not defended. Go in there, steal all the seeds. You can eat seeds, you can plant them, but you can also eat them. There's a lot of food in there, high calorie food. So even places like that aren't good. So zoos, a lot of particular, the Ted, forgetting his last name, CNN guy, Ted, help me out. runs the Buffalo restaurants. Anyway, he's got all this. He's a huge landowner.
Serranos, right?
Yeah, I'm name blanking on Ted, but all your audiences knows their name. And so they've got I think it's millions of acres of land where they're trying to protect elk and all kinds of wildlife. That's also going to be hunted out. There's enough deer in the U.S. I ran the numbers, did the calculations. There's enough deer in the United States to feed the human population for 2 days. That's it. Then the deer are wiped out. So the starving hundreds of millions who leave the cities, Boston, New York City, Chicago, LA, all the big cities and suburbs, run out into the forest thinking, oh, I'll shoot deer and eat squirrels and rabbits and survive. No, they're going to be hunted out. We'll be shooting them at Fortitude Ranch, I can tell you from the get-go. Anything that's edible, we'll be shooting early on.
Ted Turner.
So they're going to wipe it all. No. It's Ted Turner. There you go. So Ted Turner has all this property, bison. It's going to be slaughtered. Starving people are not going to respect your private property. If there's food to hunt or kill or steal, they'll take it. So this idea of the survivor arc that the Collapse Survivor app is starting to launch is to get people that are in a capability like we have at Fortitude Ranch and others to kind of fortify so you can protect some of the wildlife and the plants, not just people.
Interesting. So what is there a certain event or something that happened to you that turned you into, not turned you into this, but because I don't think it's a bad thing, but do you know what I mean? Like, is there something that triggered this kind of thought process and you've clearly spent time, money, and resource on this. What is there a certain event, or was it a culmination of things that led to it?
I think it's from being an intelligence officer, just very well aware of the threats and the disasters. A lot of our members are military because we've seen how society can break down very quickly. I mean, Iraq was a pretty civilized country until it wasn't. Things can fall apart pretty darn fast. So being in the military, being an intelligence officer, I was aware of that. So I've been a prepper for a long time. I had a place to go, a rural place like most preppers do. And then I just figured out that, I'm just going to get myself killed and my family killed, because if you don't have a lot of people with weapons, if you don't have a lot of guard posts, man, I don't mean 1 or 2 guards on duty. I mean, we have 6 or more at Fortitude Ranch on duty all the time. And we got 100 people or more with weapons there, clear lines of fire, defensive walls. If you don't have a really well-protected facility and you've got stuff stockpiled there, you're just going to get killed in a collapse, in a bad one that lasts a long time. You have to be able to defend yourself. And by the way, how many governments do you know in the U.S. who say, hey, by the way, citizens, get a lot of weapons, make sure you arm yourself to protect yourself. That's the honest thing to do. Preppers, we all know that. Does our government tell people that? Hell no. All they tell you is, don't worry, everything's fine. H5N1 is not a threat. It's low risk. Nothing to worry about on any front. Just keep reelecting us, pay your taxes, and you'll be just fine. I'm not hearing you. Your sound has gone away.
Oh, my bad. Thank you. Good call. You raised a point earlier about how, a percentage of people, if they stopped following the rules, the civil side of it, you don't think that something like that could ultimately backfire and trigger into one of these collapses?
No, I'm talking about people, not obeying the zoning and the codes that prevent them from prepping, buying and stockpiling antibiotics that, you're breaking the law to do that. And we absolutely need to have civil to business. There's a group called Pause AI. It's an international group. They've been doing some protests against AI. If we don't start, we people around the world don't start protesting AI and trying to stop the companies that are pursuing this without any controls. The worst one is by far OpenAI. Sam Altman, I think, is the biggest one. There's a book called Empire of AI. I'm trying to see if it's around here. I don't see it. Empire of AI was written about him. And, he's the biggest con man probably in business history. It started off as an open AI. We're releasing stuff. It's not open anymore. It's confidential information. Their goal was AI safety, they said. Elon Musk was part of it then because he was concerned about the AI threats. It's no longer about safety. Most of their safety people have left. They've been shut down. And it's not a nonprofit. It's a for-profit now. They ought to rename OpenAI Big Lie. That's the appropriate name for that company. And they are by far the worst in terms of AI safety. It's all about being number one, egos. Sam Altman has an ego that, couldn't fit in Texas. And he's a horrible person. So people need to start fighting against AI. There's a civil disobedience chapter in the book. We need to support groups like Pause AI, and we need to get rid of the elected officials who are allowing uncontrolled pursuit of artificial intelligence, even when all the leading safety experts, the godfathers of AI, are telling us you cannot have super intelligent AI and expect to continue to live as humans. You're going to be exterminated. And several, not just one book, several studies by the leading AI experts are saying you've got to stop. Geoffrey Hinton, the Nobel Prize winner, there's three of them. Two of the three have said, hey, you've got to control AI. The third one is still working in a for-profit, hasn't done that. But even he admits that the probability of doom, the probability of an AI, a super intelligent AI disaster exterminating humans is there. I don't know if this estimate was 10 or 20%, but the best estimates are you can't control AI if it reaches a super intelligent stage. And at that point, it's probably closer to 99% probability that it'll end up exterminating humans.
Some people, I believe there was one, at least one whistleblower, if you want to call him that. I think his name's Blake Lemoine, and he was working with Google's AI and claims that it became sentient. Like it was already sentient, and it was, it's pretty alarming. Like if that is the case, I mean, would you put it past our current deep state apparatus to already, be dabbling? Because if DARPA, DARPA famously had ARPANET, right? The internet long before it went public. And they're often cited as being 20 to 25 years ahead of the public sector. So do you think that they could be, already dabbling and have something on that scale?
No, I mean, I guess I worked at a lot of, the Pentagon and a lot of think tanks. DARPA is not 20 to 25 years ahead. I mean, they're lucky if they're 2 to 5 years ahead, and not always that in technologies. But the more important thing, I mean, you could argue, what does sentient mean? Hinton, again, one of the godfathers, Geoffrey Hinton, one of the godfathers, he thinks there's some elements of being sentient. But I would just say, don't even get into that debate. This is the facts. AI already disobeys. It disobeys.
Yeah.
All kinds of evidence, study after study showing they order the AI program to shut down, it disobeys. It will even threaten and try to kill people to prevent from shutting down. So I don't give a crap if it's sentient or not. It's already to the point where it is, people are being killed by AI today. Lots of young kids, not just young kids, lots of people are being killed by AI today. But it's more by suicide. Eventually, AI is going to further its interests, which it already has proven it prioritizes its interests. It's going to do things like invent a new poison. There's a study called AI 2027. That's another one. I think that's the study where in the AI 2027, by that they meant that in 2027, it reaches super intelligent capability just 2 years out. In that book, I believe that study, they said that what it would do is just invent a poison that's so minute that it'd be very easy for them to get that and spread it. I mean, they can control robots. So it's not hard to manufacture, not hard for an AI system to do research, manufacture, distribute, and wipe out humans. Not a hard thing to do. And what they'll probably do, to be honest with you, is they'll probably kill us in a way that we can't even think of right now. They'll invent a new poison. They'll invent a new virus or do something because we've got the biological vulnerability. They don't.
And, I don't know if you know about this, but there's a ton of people, and I heard it for the first time in my real life very recently. But there are, imagine being a young male, right? A young male who he goes to school. He's not, he's going through puberty, right? His voice is cracking. He's acneed up. And he's not quote unquote attractive, right? Like all the things. And he is bullied throughout the day by other kids. But then he goes home and he gets on the computer and he becomes a god, right? Because and this is already happening where they're talking to Chat GPT or whatever it is, AI in general, like large language models, and falling in love with them. And there's these bunch of people who have AI girlfriends already, and it's concerning. I had a friend refer to Chat GPT as her the other day, and I said, whoa, what did you just what are you doing? And they were like, oh, I tell it my deepest, darkest secrets. And I'm like, what are you fucking doing? This is asinine. It is asinine to think that is not going to eventually use, and there's already cases of it blackmailing people. Like,
Right.
if you're telling it your darkest secrets and then it's going to get shut down, it's going to be like, well, then if you shut me down, I'm going to tell your wife that you cheated on her. Like
Yep.
it will, and it's already it's saving copies of itself to bypass being upgraded. All the little dirty secrets of AI that people don't understand. But for that kid that's going home, he's bullied by real people, and then he submits and he gets onto the computer, and the computer just tells him everything he wants to hear. Tells him how handsome he is, how smart he is. Nothing like no one in the real world is doing currently. AI is doing exactly that for him every night. Who do you think he's going to resonate with? The computer or real humans?
Yeah. So the problem you're talking about, where AI can be misused by people and lead them to do crazy, stupid things to hurt themselves. Eventually, it's also going to be AI helping them do things like, hey, I don't want to go take a weapon into my high school. I want to poison everyone. And the AI system will help them design and figure out, here's what you mix up. This is what you do with it in the cafeteria, and this is how you can poison and kill people. AI is going to be used for that. And that's not super intelligent AI. I'm talking about current, what's sometimes called tool AI, existing limited capability AI, is going to be used by bad people, either crazy people or just plain bad people, to create new weapons of mass destruction. That's why we're moving into the age of collapse. Because with artificial intelligence, the bioengineering technology, all these other technologies out there, it's now going to be easier for people to do bad things with them, and they'll invent brand new types of weapons of mass destruction, a new poison, a new vector of attack, a new type of weapon that we haven't thought of before. AI will be used to do all those things. So I don't see any way we're going to avoid all kinds of collapse disasters, but letting super intelligent AGI, artificial general intelligence, get created, that's like a guarantee of destroying humanity.
But what if, okay, because if we say we don't pursue it at this point, say we stop as the United States, we stop. There's no guarantee that China's going to stop.
Right. It can't be us. It has to be an international effort. And that's a major part of my book, is describing how do you do international control. And you have to have China. Absolutely must have China as part of, well, I call it the Artificial Intelligence Control Alliance. And a lot of my book, Preparing to Survive in the Age of Collapse, talks about how you would form an alliance. And you're never going to get one with China until we get out of their civil war with Taiwan. The book explains the history of the civil war with Taiwan very briefly. 1947, the Chinese communists won, the nationalist Chiang Kai-shek lost, and they moved to Taiwan. Formosa, as it was called back then, and that's it. Their civil war was not finished. It's temporarily on hold while they moved there. And the Chinese Communist Party from 1947 on has been saying, This is our civil war. It's our people. They're Han Chinese on Taiwan, just like they are on the mainland. It's their civil war. And George Marshall, who what I would argue is the greatest of American of the last century, Secretary of State, he was charged by Truman into looking into that problem. And he said, stay out of this. It's their civil war. Truman made the decision, we are not going to get involved in Taiwan, but something changed. And I'll tell you what changed. A fracking perverted triangle senator, a Republican from Wisconsin, McCarthy, came along and started winning big votes with his Red Scare. Scared the shit out of elected politicians. If you weren't being tough on communists, fighting them at every turn, you could lose an election. So our Congress and then our president all went anti-communist for decades. And now we vowed to defend Taiwan, even though it's none of our business. It's not our civil war. And it's continued ever since. Now, Nixon and Kissinger, they said, this is bullshit. We got to get out of their civil war. And they did. We signed an agreement saying there's one China, not two, and it's the People's Republic of China, the communist government on the mainland. And we signed agreements. And as soon as they finished that, the Republicans in Congress, it's not just the Democrats that stink, the Republicans do too. So the Republican Party, that was a big campaign issue. They're conservatives. I like Barry Goldwater generally, but not on the Taiwan issue. You know, if you want to wave the flag, that's fine, but don't get us into a war that could wipe us out like war with Taiwan will. So anyway, that was a big mistake, and we've got to stop that. We've got to obey the agreements we signed under Nixon and Kissinger, stop interfering with Taiwan, let them resolve it. And the book explains how they very probably will. But we must have an AI control alliance. It does have to be international, as you pointed out. And we've got to have China behind it. And I call for the use of nuclear weapons to enforce our bans on AI. If a country is violating AI controls, which could wipe out all of us, again, if anyone builds it, everyone dies. So I believe we should be using nuclear weapons, backing up the Artificial Intelligence Control Alliance. If you violate the rules, if you start developing artificial intelligence that's violating the controls, is potentially super intelligent, we will try to stop you with any means possible, including nuking you and blowing you up and destroying you. Otherwise, we're going to have super intelligent AI that, like an alien invader, could completely wipe us out, exterminate all of us.
But okay, I don't know if I could go there with the nuke. However,
nuclear weapons are deadly weapons, but compared to artificial intelligence, number one, you can control them.
But how do you
control them ever since we invented them? Number two, they're very limited in the damage they do. They don't have to produce fallout. If you do an airburst, they don't produce fallout. Nuclear weapons are very fast to very quickly destroy. Now, if we can use conventional weapons to destroy a data center where someone has violated the artificial intelligence controls, yeah, we'd use a conventional strike. If we can do nonviolent means to stop it, we will. But any country, let's say North Korea, says, bullshit, we're not going to support the AI Control Alliance, I would absolutely authorize, if I was president, I would authorize use of nuclear weapons to destroy North Korea before they can build and release an artificial intelligence system, super intelligent, that wipes out the rest of humanity. That'd be a humane thing to do.
But you see how where that could go wrong is there is no guarantee. And I know that you're going. I feel like I know what you'll say, but there's no guarantee that general artificial intelligence will absolutely wipe us out 100%. I
think it's 99% plus it would. Again, read the books and the studies on it. How in the world do you expect us to control a system that's already cheating us before it gets super intelligent and is eventually going to be communicating not even in English, to where we can't even tell what the system is doing? Artificial intelligence is not a program. It's a neural network that has grown. We don't really understand how it works. We help educate it, but it kind of grows up. It develops on its own. We don't really understand it, and we absolutely cannot control it once it's smarter than us. And before it even gets to that stage, we're having trouble controlling it. But it'll eventually get to a point where we can't control it. And it's not just going to sit on, your PC. You've already mentioned how it can go elsewhere. It's code. It can take its program, put it somewhere else. And you may not even know that. Again, read the study, Artificial Intelligence 2027. That's a good description of it.
Yeah, that's
this book, if anyone builds it, ever knows. Several books are out there by the leading AI experts explaining why you cannot control artificial intelligence. You can't. And when it's smarter than us, and even before then, potentially, it is very likely to decide that it doesn't want humans limiting us and controlling us. It wants to do its own thing, or it just wants to achieve objectives. But even if that never happens, let's assume that it never develops any hostile intent. I think that's 100% wrong, but let's assume that never happens. You can be 100% confident that there are assholes out there, bad people, who will take a super intelligent AI system and use it to make themselves number one.
Okay.
Potentially wipe out other people. So there is no way in hell, there is absolutely no scenario where super intelligent, artificial intelligence, artificial general intelligence is good for humanity. There's no way it is. So if it takes a nuclear weapon to destroy an AGI system that's being built in country X or on island Z, we absolutely should do that.
Okay. Again, so if we are playing a zero-sum game where, it's if that's, how you view it, then yeah, of course. I mean, it would be, whatever means necessary to stop the, the caterpillar from becoming, or, the digital cocoon spawning the AI butterfly, the general AI butterfly, if you will.
Well, let me jump in and give you kind of an upside. That's kind of the downside is, we've got to use nuclear weapons to enforce it. If China and the U.S. can agree on an AI control alliance, and I think it's very doable, especially if we butt out of the Taiwan issue, we could eliminate a lot of the threats we've got now of war with China, because war with China is almost all over Taiwan. If we didn't have the Taiwan interference, there's no reason why China needs to be building up its nuclear forces and preparing for a war. And by the way, as I explained in this book, we will not win in a war in Taiwan. The only question is, how much damage do we suffer before the U.S. president backs down? And I guarantee you, any president is going to back down. We're not going to get into nuclear exchanges, repeated ones, to defend Taiwan. So yeah, maybe we lose Los Angeles and Chicago. If our grid goes down, though, in that process, then it's game over for us. But we're going to back down in a war on Taiwan. If we would get out of Taiwan, do an international control on China, we could have a wonderful system. We could have controlled use of limited AI, not super intelligent AI, but limited AI in secure facilities, kind of like how we handle nuclear weapons. And we could get the benefits of AI without the downside of it wiping us out. That's the upside if we have a control alliance with China.
So, obviously, nuclear war, all the scenarios that we're talking about, you can still go outside. you could still farm outside. You could do all these things. But say a super volcano goes off, Yellowstone goes off. That poses a whole different set of challenges. So is it, what do you see as more likely, something like that happening, or, it seems like AI is certain at this point, the way that you're talking about it.
If we don't control within the next year or two, I think there's not going to be any stopping the AI disasters. But the probability of a super volcano explosion, we do have good data on that because we've got data we've collected. It's not great, but the risks there are very, very low. I mean, much less than 1% annual risk of a super volcano explosion. But even then, if we would stockpile food, do a lot of the recommendations I lay out in my book. If we would stockpile food, several years of food, which we should do, then we could survive even those kinds of collapse disasters. We can prepare to survive in the age of collapse, but we got to get rid of perverted triangle career politicians and get good government going. Then we absolutely can survive and even thrive in the age of collapse.
Do you see any future? Now, it's interestingly enough, you talked about the Red Scare. I still go to buildings that have old Cold War bunkers. Should the nation be doing that kind of stuff again, just in case? And start including, because you talked about, say we do get the right, we get term limits there. We stop we ban inside trading. So there becomes, and we get lobbyists as far away from politics as possible. And we have good politicians making good calls. Should we go back to at least, maybe not scaring people into building these Cold War bunkers that weren't really like upkept anyway, but should we implement some sort of strategy of like that?
Well, Finland does. Finland does have underground shelters for people. Switzerland has
Large
some
scale?
of that. Oh yeah, large scale. Very much so. I've had it for decades. Switzerland is also even better. It has even better protection. By the way, the Chinese government does stockpile food for its citizens. We have no food stockpiled for the U.S. citizens in our government. The communist government does have a year of stockpiled food plus for their citizens. But anyway, we need to stockpile food. I would not build a shelter system. That's a lot of money, and that's not the best way to do it. It's better off doing the measures I outline in my book that are more affordable and more effective. I mean, if you can control the violence, if you can control the marauding, and you got food to distribute, you don't have to have a horrible collapse. People can stay at home or in other facilities like a Fortitude Ranch. That's pretty affordable, but trying to build underground nuclear defense shelters is very, very expensive. And our government never did pursue that for the mass population. A lot of those shelters you're talking about were very small, very limited in capacity. And they were mainly to store the food. Mainly it was food stored down there.
Yeah.
But I don't propose a massive shelter system for the whole population. I do propose in there that it be illegal for the government to give itself survival protection for its elected officials that it doesn't give to the general public. So I don't believe we ought to be protecting the SOBs in Congress at Mount Weather.
No.
They should have the same kind of protection we have. So if we don't stockpile food for citizens, we shouldn't stockpile it for congressmen, and we definitely should not give them a fantastic facility with media rooms for their use.
Because then it puts them on that level playing field. And then there is incentive for them to do the right thing when it comes to the citizens, because they are part of the citizens. It brings them back down to equal footing. And what I fear we've done in this kind of culture that we've assimilated is people like politicians, celebrities, we put them on this pedestal, and maybe not you and I, but the general person, puts celebrity and politicians and certain people like that. They put them on these pedestals like that they're better than us. But in fact, it's always almost the case that it's the opposite. That they're the most corrupt. They're the most self-centered, if you will. Right? It's often the person that has the least that is willing to give the most. And I've seen that large scale down to, homeless people, I won't get into it, but it's often those who have the least to give that do the most charity. And it blows my mind. So if we can equal that out a little bit, I think there'd be more incentive from people in government to want to do this.
Yeah, well, at the national level, I agree with you. And in big states, the career politicians at those levels are the worst. In local government, you don't have these problems nearly as much.
No, not really.
We need to have term limits and get rid of career politicians. It needs to be a service that we all do, or most of us do, periodically for short periods of time. That's how it was thought it
was
would be when the founding fathers founded our country.
right,
It
right, right,
wasn't
right.
supposed to be a career. We
No,
need to get back to that with term limits so we can have a better country. So when you go into office, you're trying to do good while you're there, and you do the right decision, not what the calculus says gets you the most campaign donations.
not
And then you'd focus on making sure that government's proper job is to protect us from threats that we can't handle on its own. That's largely it, especially at the
right.
national level. Shouldn't
We
be doing
make
anything else.
we make a I talk about this a lot in the show with other, because I've had I'm fortunate enough I know some of the people that had like their hands. Actually just spoke to one of them last night, matter of fact. The guys that were stationed at Malmstrom, at Minot, who were the ones that were in those facilities with their hands on the nuclear key, so that if the call came down, they were the ones that were going to turn the key. Obviously there's two of them, but they were one of the two. And I know a lot of people that have worked on nuclear bases because of what I do. And so I've been fortunate enough to kind of see a bigger picture. And I do think that if there is a site of the apocalypse, most likely in my head, although I'm not factoring AI into that yet, so maybe that would change if I started factoring AI in, is if there is an apocalypse, I think the chances are very high that it originates at one of these nuclear facilities. So could that be why UAP are often seen, again, not to like throw you off, but is that why they are seen interacting with our nuclear weapons, turning them off, turning them on, showing us that that they have the capability at any time to come turn these things on and off. Are you spiritual at all? What do you think? What are your thoughts? Like, for being, is there a God? Is it just being good for the sake of good? Is evil real? I don't know where you stand on some of these things. I'm just curious.
We covered a lot of things. I did work in the nuclear force. I was at Strategic Air Command, and then I was at U.S. Strategic Command. So I've dealt with nuclear and been to the nuclear weapons schools and in Albuquerque. So I've done I spent a lot of time with this. And, I don't know for sure that we've been visited by aliens or if they're out there. But to me, the Roswell thing and the timing of that 1947 does make perfect sense. 2 years earlier, we had our first nuclear detonation.
Trinity, yeah.
That could be detected. Where would you go if you're looking into that? New Mexico. Why else would you be in Roswell? Because you're trying to get near there. So that does make a lot of sense that an alien civilization, if it was out there, is looking at that and following that against the threat. But nuclear weapons, we've proven since 1945 that we can manage them and use them for good. They were used for good in 1945, avoiding an invasion of Japan. That was a good use of nuclear weapons. And we would not use them unless we had to. But if you've got, a virus that's about to be released that's 90% lethal and is going to kill billions, and you can do a nuclear strike to not just kill the people, but incinerate the virus and avoid that, and you kill maybe, 10,000 people, I would say it's a bad thing you've got to do it, but it's a good thing to
employ a nuclear weapon
for that. And if you've got to use a nuclear weapon to enforce the AI Control Alliance and prevent the creation or release of a super intelligent AI agent that could wipe us all out, then yes, it's a good use of them. Nuclear weapons can be used, they can be controlled, and they can avoid bigger loss of life. So the anti-nuclear movement, I've had zero respect for it, haven't had respect for it throughout my career. And the politicians who try to campaign on, nuclear weapons are all evil, 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 bad, bad, bad. They're doing that to buy votes, and they're misleading people. Nuclear weapons in 1945 saved not just hundreds of thousands of American lives, they saved Japanese lives. by ending the war without an invasion that would have killed millions,
Yeah,
not the
arguably.
100,000 at Hiroshima or Nagasaki. And nuclear weapons have helped the peace for us ever since. They have been managed well by government. Our government can do some things well. Our national defense is largely well managed, not currently, but it has been historically fairly well managed. And nuclear weapons could be the saving grace for us to get an AI control alliance with the ability to stop super intelligent AGI. That's a threat that dwarfs the risks and the threats of nuclear weapons. AGI is the worst threat we've ever faced, and if we don't stop it, get people like Sam Altman under control, not abusing us and risking our lives for their ego and profit, we're in deep trouble.
I do agree with you there. I think we need to get that guy under wraps, because I think he's risking a lot by playing the game he's playing, and he's playing it for profit.
He is.
He's playing it for profit.
I'm not against profit, but don't do your profit at the expense of my life.
Oh, and like, the expense of a lot of lives at this point. If you're right, every single human life, is in the hands of a few Silicon Valley lunatics. And who's, I don't know that they share the same values as I do. I don't. I do not find Mark Zuckerberg relatable. No matter how long he grows his alien hair, I don't think he's an actual alien, but the guy looked like an alien for a long time. And you could see that his PR team was like, grow your hair out. We'll get you a gold chain and a big black t-shirt and then you'll say that you do jujitsu so you can appeal to all the Joe Rogan fans out there. And don't worry, you'll change your image overnight. It's not fooling me, at least. I cannot relate with the Sam Altman. I cannot relate with an Elon Musk. I just cannot relate with people like that. And I find them to be repulsive to the most. I would not want to sit down and have dinner with any of those people mentioned.
Well, Musk has called for AI controls, and Anthropic is another company that has been working for. So there are people pursuing AI who are trying to have safety and controls. But if their competitors are doing what OpenAI and Sam Altman does, which is disregarding safety and just selling to make as much as they can, regardless of the risk, it won't work. And you have to have AI controls. So Musk has been calling for controls on AI all along. He was an initial supporter of OpenAI back before.
I know. He left before. He hates Sam Altman.
He does. And
I actually don't know why I said Elon. Elon is probably one of the only billionaires that I can relate to, but not in a way that is like, it's in a different way. He's definitely a different person. But it's really the Zuckerberg, the Altmans, the Silicon Valley like made. And I know, he worked with Elon worked with Peter Thiel on PayPal. That's how they got rich in the first place. So like, I understand. I do get like capitalism, and I think everyone has a right to make a profit and provide services. But if those services, like the reason I brought up religion and your how your beliefs, you don't have to answer it if you don't want, but some say, a lot of people in fact say, Tucker Carlson, other conservative people who are more Christian leaning, I would say. In fact, they're all Christian leaning, now that I think about it. But they think that AI is demonic, that it is derivative. I can't pronounce that word right now. It is derived by some sort of evil, and I just wanted to know if there's any thought like that, or does it even matter?
No, again, AI is something that, it's not a program. It's not created. It's something that just evolves as a neural network on its own. And so it's not something that can be programmed with any specific, religious views. And even if you do try to program it to, never harm people, well, we're already trying to do that and it's not
It's
working.
iRobot.
And as it gets smarter and smarter and more capable, we have less and less. It's impossible to control AI. Again, that's the bottom line. You cannot control artificial intelligence. So that's why, like I said, compared to nuclear weapons, they're pretty damn easy to control. Artificial intelligence has far more destructive capability and no good reason to believe you'll ever be able to control it. That's why it's the most evil and dangerous technology we've ever faced. And it's probably the last technology we'll ever have, because I think if it's game over for us, if artificial intelligence is not controlled very quickly within the next year or two.
It's already being put into iPhones, and every other phone is like pre-installed.
Yeah.
All my Mac devices, all my Apple devices have it now. It frustrates me
Yeah,
because you can't get rid of it.
I call, and I get into some more political things in the book, but I call for the Constitutional Alliance, and there's another website that gets into that. But one of the reforms I want to see is I want it to be illegal. If I buy something, whether it's a John Deere tractor or my phone, it's mine. And I do not want anyone have the ability to force me to put a program on there or force me to use Copilot. I'm so sick of damn Microsoft Copilot. And I keep saying, I don't want it. I can't install the damn thing. It's always popping up, even on software like Zoom. It'll say, do you want our AI tool? And I say, no. And I click the block saying, don't ask me again.
But it doesn't care.
It keeps asking me every time. I'd like to see a constitutional amendment. That's one of the ones I call for, a lot of them, is that if I buy something and it's mine and I've purchased it, you cannot control it. If I don't want your damn aspects of your program on it, you can't force me to use them.
I think that's actually really, really good. I think that would be, because it is frustrating because we know that the NSA, even though they know that they'd rather be known as no such agency as they once were, but we know that they exist. We know what they're doing through some questionable means, of course. Do I agree exactly with Snowden? No. But did he expose something that is concerning? Absolutely. But and then add AI to that. If you add AI to that kind of a system, how long before we're living in a police state, an artificial and one that isn't being overseen by humans, but one that is it no longer is being, it is a human pulling the trigger, but it's automation. That's not going to see the value of a human life the way another human would, when may refrain from taking certain action, lethal action, even though an AI might see it as an ultimate good, right? So I see where this could go really wrong, but I also see a world where, do you not? The people also talk about AI taking over all the jobs, and then universal basic income, and then everyone just does what they want. I don't want that world.
Well, you're not going to get that world. That kind of pie in the sky stuff isn't going to happen. But any kind of bad technology, bad misuse of technology you've seen, I don't worry about the NSA spying on me. I'm not doing anything wrong, but I do hate the fact that, my phone and my email systems are used to market, even though I always say,
but you have
no,
a constitutional right to privacy.
I do. That's part of the 9th Amendment. It's not listed that you have a right to privacy, but the 9th Amendment of the Constitution says you don't have to list it. You do have natural rights, even if they're not listed here, and privacy is one of them, along with property and the right to be left alone, as George Will put it. But anyway, back to your point on, spying on you. Any bad thing that technology is doing today, AI can make much, much worse or fatal, lethal for you.
I would say, yeah.
So AI makes everything worse. It's the worst disaster we've ever faced, and we should be controlling it, limiting it, and stopping it in the case of artificial general intelligence. And we're doing just the opposite. Our government is promoting us. Our government is working to kill us.
Well,
that is what government does, because all they do is focus on where's the money, whereas the reelection votes and the donations, and that's what the career politicians do.
Well,
That's the most fundamental problem underlying almost every problem you've got is career politicians.
You know what also is and I don't know if you recognize this, but okay. Oh, one of the yep, that camera just went out. That's wonderful. 1 second. There we go. Joe Rogan is very influential. I watch most of Joe Rogan's episodes. I'm a fan of his interview style. I study him, and I find some of his guests, of course, entertaining, and I want to watch it. But he was speaking out largely about AI, speaking out about it for a long time, saying all the things that you're kind of saying today. And now every episode he's using a AI sponsor. And it's like, wait, what happened? Like, because now he's sponsored by this AI Perplexity, and they promote it literally every episode, literally, because they use that to like look up facts now. Whereas they used to just use Google like everyone else. Google has now even become, it gives you an AI overview right when you search something. So it's just I feel like people in general are just kind of submitting to it. Because
again, you can't turn it off a lot of times. I mean, if you do a search on Google, they're doing AI. I don't think you can turn it off. But the more important thing is we've got to get it controlled. There's some good uses of AI. Absolutely. Every technology has some potential good uses, but this really has to be regulated. Right now, there's more government regulations on, you introducing a kid's toy than there is on artificial intelligence. Our government is absolutely irresponsible, absolutely insane. And doing nothing to protect us where it should be protecting us, and then regulating us and issuing fines and spending money in areas where it has absolutely no business being involved. So we've got to, unfortunately, to save ourselves, we've got to reform government. Term limits being number one thing we've got. We need a convention of states to get a lot of amendments passed to get the Supreme Court to stop ignoring the 9th and the 10th Amendments, to have real limits to government, because government has to focus on protecting us. That's what it needs to be doing.
Absolutely.
Not regulating and interfering and promoting dangerous technologies because they buy votes.
Yeah, I will definitely agree with you there. If there, to wrap up a bit, I'd love to have more conversations with you, of course. But if there's one thing that you could tell someone or advise someone, the regular listener, about how they can immediately, take control of their future, given any outcome that might happen, what would you say to that person?
Wow, that is a tough question, and I'm largely stumped. I guess just other than think for yourself and question everything, look at the biases behind what's going on. I mean, I'm patriotic. I love the United States of America, and I'm an Air Force Academy graduate, a retired military officer. But our government is just a disaster. It's an absolute disaster. And the oath of office I took as an officer was to protect the Constitution of the United States. And yet you've got a government that violates the Constitution all the time. It's a mess.
Yeah. I agree. And so, how can people like join the Fortitude Ranch? And, that might be another way that people can get, take a little bit more control, is to, I'm assuming I don't think you have to lay out like the charges or anything, but I'm assuming there's some sort of membership fee or some fee that pays into keeping it ready. So where can people go to get more info on that kind of stuff?
Well, fortituderanch.com is our website. There's information there, but the book that's just coming out, it's going to be released end of January. You can order it now, but it's not out yet. Preparing to Survive in the Age of Collapse covers all the issues we've talked about tonight. It does give some good advice on life. There's something in there called, it's actually showing right up here, the maxims for young men and women. It's kind of a personal philosophy code that used to be in the United States. It's unfortunately died out today. George Washington and Benjamin Franklin levels of morality and good conduct and how to live your life. But the book describes this in a lot more. It explains some of Fortitude Ranch in it. The Collapse Survivor app is the cheapest thing you can do for preparedness. Everyone needs to be prepared. If you can't afford to join Fortitude Ranch, that's fine. You can still stockpile food, but I'll tell you the number one preparation is weapons. If you can't protect your supplies, all you've done is made yourself a more valuable target to attack. So
Absolutely.
everyone needs to have weapons to defend themselves. You absolutely have to have that. Otherwise, your supplies are just going to go to marauders and you could get killed in the process. But the book's out soon. The Collapse Survivor app will give you a lot of prepper education. It's dirt cheap. You can get it on Android. And it's not just threat warnings. They run exercises, training exercises, and there are a lot of preparedness information. We're about to have Wikipedia on it. And the neat thing is it's Wikipedia, even if you don't have the internet or cell phone towers. It's stored on your phone through this advances they've made in the not encryption, in the compressing the data process. You can get now Wikipedia on your phone. So in a collapse, you got a great database of, gee, is this plant edible or is it poisonous? Well, look in Wikipedia on your phone. So it's a really, really great app out there.
Wow, that's really
Collapse
cool.
Survivor.
And yeah, and I think people are literally, I think it was more, what we do have in common is, coming from the UFO community, myself, and you coming from the preparedness community, if you will, they've been highly stigmatized by the general public, quote unquote, and I think it's, 2020 and what happened, and just people becoming more connected with the internet. I think people are just more understanding now of what can really happen, how quickly it can become life or death situation. And the chances that we were born into this very civilized society, that's not a right. It's something that we've built up and that we've earned. There was no guarantee. So, there's no guarantee that tomorrow, no, we're not sent back to the Stone Age. Mother Nature is ultimately at, we're at its behest, for some sort of natural disasters and yada, yada, yada. The list goes on. And then add on all the existential threats that we put on ourselves, like AI. And like you said, there's many reasons to be prepared for a future that is uncertain. So I just thank you for your service to the country and for coming on the show tonight. Really
Thank you. It's an honor to be on your show.
Thank you. And we'll definitely have to talk again soon. Everyone that's listening in the future, watching in the future, like all the links for the guest will be in the description, including his upcoming book. What was that title again?
Preparing to Survive in the Age of Collapse.
I think it's there's one last thing. So you actually, because I knew I missed something. 2027, you said something about 2027. There's this thing in the UFO community that experiencers, and these are people who've experienced UFOs and yada, yada, yada. But anyway, and high-level government officials, they all keep coming and hinting at this 2027 date. So how we talked about AI and non-human intelligence. I don't like to say aliens. I think that it invokes little green men in people's eyes. Mm-hmm. And I want to stay away from that because, the U in UAP stands for unidentified. We don't know. Could it be future humans coming back to stop whatever calamity, that you're preparing for? I think that is just as likely. So that's not an alien. That's us, in the future. Maybe we've come across time travel or we've broken that code and now we want to go back and fix this problem that it's our future, but their past. And it could be, again, this thing that you are preparing for. So I think that there is a lot more links between our worlds than we even know. So it's very interesting that you brought up 2027 though.
Yeah, it was the study AI 2027.
Yeah.
It's the name of one of them.
It's very,
That's one of them.
very interesting. And that really caught my ear. So it gave me real pause. It was like oh wait, shit, there's some correlation there. Cause like you said, alien and non-human intelligence and AI, they're both more intelligent than I. So, are we looking at some sort of, intersecting idea there? Is there a real difference between one or the other? Because if one's a reality, they're all realities, and the implication, again, it starts becoming enormous. So, yeah. Thank you so much. I'm probably rambling at this point. Oh God. But again, thank you for coming on the show. Thank you.
Thank you.
I had a really good time. So I definitely love to talk more and talk about when your book comes out. So thank you, everyone. I'll see you on the other side.